You know that gut feeling when something feels off, but you can't fully explain it. That uneasy twist in your stomach that whispers, "Pay attention, something isn't right." That's exactly how I felt the night I first noticed my girlfriend's behavior around my best friend. It was supposed to be just another casual evening. Pizza boxes scattered on the table, video games humming in the background, laughter bouncing off the walls. Nothing out of the ordinary. But that's the thing about red flags. They don't always show up in dramatic ways. Sometimes they slip in quietly, almost disguised as harmless moments. I remember sitting on the couch, half focused on the game we were playing, when I heard her laugh. Now my girlfriend is naturally bubbly. She laughs often, and that's something I always loved about her. But this laugh, it was different, sharper, louder, longer. It wasn't just a reaction. It felt like a performance. I glanced over and saw her leaning toward my best friend. Not toward me, toward him. Her eyes were locked on his, sparkling in a way I usually only saw when she was looking at me. Her hand reached out, almost casually, brushing against his arm as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And in that split second, my stomachs dropped. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I'm imagining this. Maybe she's just being friendly. After all, my best friend has that kind of charm that makes people feel comfortable around him. He's the kind of guy who can walk into a room full of strangers and leave with everyone thinking they've known him for years. Of course, she'd laugh at his jokes. He's genuinely funny. But then it happened again and again. Each laugh seemed to linger a little too long, like she didn't want the moment to end. Each touch on his shoulder felt less like an accident and more like a choice. And that eye contact, it wasn't just casual glances. It was that deep, lingering connection that two people share when they're drawn to each other. I could feel my chest tighten. A war broke out in my head. One side screamed, "You're overreacting. Don't be that insecure boyfriend who freaks out over nothing." The other side whispered, "But this doesn't feel right. Something about this is different." The worst part, my best friend didn't even seem to notice. He was laughing, talking, and carrying on like everything was normal. He wasn't flirting back. He wasn't crossing any lines. If anything, he seemed completely oblivious, which only made me feel more isolated, like I was the only one seeing what was really happening. I sat there, quiet, pretending to be invested in the game. On the outside, I looked calm. On the inside, I was spiraling. Was I jealous? Was I insecure? Or was I simply picking up on something my girlfriend thought I wouldn't notice? That night, when everyone left, and it was just the two of us, I couldn't shake the image out of my head. Her leaning in, laughing, brushing his arm. I kept replaying it over and over, analyzing every detail. The tone of her laugh, the way her hand lingered, the sparkle in her eyes. And the more I thought about it, the heavier that feeling in my gut became. Still, I didn't say anything. I told myself, no, don't start a fight over this. Don't accuse her of something when you're not even sure. I convinced myself that maybe I was just tired. Maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe it was nothing, but deep down I knew. This wasn't nothing. This was the first crack in the glass. A small one, yes, but I've learned that cracks have a way of spreading if you ignore them. That night, as I laid in bed next to her, I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, while she slept peacefully beside me. I wanted to shake it off, but I couldn't. The red flag had been planted in my mind, and no matter how hard I tried to bury it, I knew it was only the beginning. At first, I kept telling myself it was nothing. A laugh here, a playful touch there, maybe. I was just being paranoid. But as the weeks went by, those little moments stopped feeling random. They started feeling intentional. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was a pattern. Every time we all hung out together, the same thing happened. We'd be in a group, whether it was movie night, grabbing food, or just chilling at my place. And somehow, her attention always shifted toward my best friend. It wasn't subtle anymore. She'd lean into him when he spoke, even if she was sitting right next to me. She'd laugh at every single thing he said, literally every word, even the ones that weren't even remotely funny. He could make a dumb comment like, "Man, traffic was rough today." And she'd burst into giggles, like he had just delivered the punchline of the century. At first, I wanted to believe she was just being polite. Some people laugh more when they're nervous or trying to fit in. But this didn't feel like polite laughter. It felt like the kind of laughter that says, "I want your attention, and I want you to notice me." And it wasn't just the laughter. The physical contact kept happening too. Little touches on his arm, a playful shove when he made a joke. Once, I caught her brushing something off his shoulder, something that wasn't even there. It was small, but the way she did it, so casually, like it was natural, it stung. The worst part was, it wasn't even about jealousy toward my friend. I trusted him with my life. He wasn't giving her any signals back. If anything, he looked a little awkward sometimes, like he didn't know what to do with the attention. But her behavior, it felt like a betrayal, like she was disrespecting me right in front of my face and assuming I wouldn't notice. And I'll be honest, each time it happened, I felt smaller and smaller. It's one thing to deal with a stranger flirting with your partner. That's uncomfortable, sure, but at least you know where you stand. But to see your girlfriend acting that way toward your best friend, that hits differently. It's personal. It's a slap in the face that keeps stinging long after the moment is over. I started paying attention more carefully, almost like I was studying her. When we were alone, she didn't act that way. She wasn't constantly laughing at my every word. She wasn't reaching out to touch me over nothing. Don't get me wrong, she was affectionate, but it wasn't excessive, which made me wonder, why was she over the top only when he was around? That question ate at me. I didn't want to confront her without being sure, so I watched. Each hangout, each gathering, the same script played out. She'd focus on him, laugh at him, touch him. Me, I felt like the third wheel in my own relationship. I remember one night in particular. We were sitting at a diner after a late movie. She and my best friend were across from me, side by side, while I sat directly across from them. I barely got a word in the entire time because she kept steering the conversation back to him. "So, what's your dream job? Do you believe in soulmates? What's your type in a girl?" I sat there, staring at my food, feeling invisible. Those weren't just friendly questions. Those were the kind of questions you ask someone you're interested in. And while she was busy giggling and soaking up his answers, I was left wondering why she wasn't asking me those things anymore. By the end of that night, I couldn't pretend anymore. It wasn't just me being sensitive. It wasn't just a random moment here or there. It was a pattern, and patterns don't lie. That's when the real weight hit me. If this was how she acted when I was sitting right there, what was she like when I wasn't around? That thought alone kept me awake at night. And while I tried to convince myself not to jump to conclusions, deep down, I knew this wasn't just in my head. Something was shifting in my relationship, and it was shifting fast, and not in a good way. Here's the tricky part. I didn't want to seem insecure. That word, insecure, haunted me every time I thought about saying something. Nobody wants to be that clingy, overprotective boyfriend who freaks out because his girlfriend laughs at. Another guy's joke. Society teaches us that if you point out something like that, people will roll their eyes and say, "Relax, man. Don't be so jealous." And that's exactly what I didn't want. I didn't want to hand her the excuse of calling me controlling or paranoid. I didn't want to risk making things awkward between me, her, and my best friend. So instead of speaking up, I kept all of it bottled inside me. But the problem with keeping things bottled up, they don't just go away, they grow. Every time I saw her giggle too much or lean in too close, my chest tightened. My mind would race, screaming, "Say something, call it out!" But my mouth stayed shut. I'd plaster on a fake smile, act like everything was fine, and laugh along with them, even though inside, I felt like I was crumbling. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking. I replayed conversations in my head over and over. Maybe she's just being friendly. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. Maybe I'm just tired or stressed, and it's making me see things that aren't really there. But deep down, I knew what respect in a relationship looked like. And whatever this was, it wasn't it. Respect means being mindful of your partner's feelings. Respect means not putting them in situations where they feel small, invisible, or replaced. And that's exactly how I was feeling. Replaced. Still, I told myself, don't make this a big deal. Don't ruin your relationship over something that might be in your head. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I ignored it long enough, it would stop. Spoiler. It didn't. In fact, the more I ignored it, the worse it got. Her behavior didn't fade. It became bolder, more noticeable, and the more I kept quiet, the more powerless I felt. It was like watching a storm build on the horizon. You see the dark clouds forming. You hear the thunder rumbling, but you just stand there, hoping maybe it'll pass over without hitting you. And here's the thing about inner conflict. It eats at you. You start questioning everything. I questioned my girlfriend. Does she really like me? Or is she just waiting for a chance with him? I questioned my best friend. What if he secretly enjoys the attention? What if he feels something too? And worst of all, I questioned myself. Am I not good enough? Am I just imagining problems because I don't measure up? That last question stung the most, because when you're caught in that battle between speaking up and staying silent, your confidence starts to erode. You start to feel like maybe you're the problem. Maybe you're too sensitive. Maybe you're asking for too much. But at the same time, another voice inside me whispered, "No, you're not crazy. You're not asking for too much. You just want respect." That tug of war between those two voices kept me up at night. Some nights, I'd rehearse what I wanted to say to her. "Hey, the way you act around him makes me uncomfortable." But then I'd imagine her response, rolling her eyes, calling me jealous, telling me I was overreacting, and the courage would evaporate. So I said nothing. I became the silent observer in my own relationship, pretending not to notice while everything inside me screamed that I couldn't ignore this forever. Because no matter how hard you try to bury your feelings, they have a way of rising back up, louder, heavier, and harder to control. And deep down, I knew one thing for sure. This inner conflict wasn't sustainable. Eventually, something was going to give. Either I'd explode from holding it all in, or I'd finally gather the courage to confront her. But until that day came, I was stuck in the worst place possible. Not in control, not at peace, just trapped in the endless loop of second-guessing myself. And that, honestly, was almost worse than the flirting itself. Every relationship has that one moment, the exact second, where you realize you can't ignore things anymore. For me, that moment came on an evening that was supposed to be fun and casual, A small get-together with a few friends. Nothing big. Just laughter, music, snacks, and conversations. The kind of night where everything is supposed to feel light and easy. But instead of feeling relaxed, I felt like I was sitting in the middle of a test I hadn't studied for. We all gathered in the living room, chatting, eating, catching up. I sat down on the couch, and without hesitation, my girlfriend chose the seat right between me and my best friend. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was just the spot that felt most comfortable, but as the night went on, it became clear that her choice wasn't random at all. From the moment she sat down, it was like I didn't even exist. Every word out of her mouth was directed at him. She leaned in close when he spoke, laughed at everything, even the things that weren't funny, and whispered to him like they were sharing some secret I wasn't allowed to hear. I sat there, only inches away, yet I felt like the third wheel, and here's what made it worse. My best friend wasn't playing into it. He wasn't encouraging her, but he wasn't shutting it down either. He just sat there, smiling politely, responding when she spoke, clearly uncomfortable, but too nice to say anything, and I could see it. The awkward glance he'd throw my way every now and then, almost like he wanted to say, "I don't know why she's doing this, man." I'm not trying to cross any lines, but the line was already being crossed by her. At one point, she leaned into him so much that her shoulder practically brushed his. She whispered something I couldn't hear, then burst into laughter, lightly shoving his shoulder with her hand. And that was it. That tiny, playful push. It was small, harmless looking to anyone else, but to me, it was the straw that broke the camel's back, because in that moment, I didn't just see her flirting. I saw her doing it in front of me, as if my feelings didn't matter, as if my presence didn't matter. It wasn't just disrespect. It was bold disrespect. My best friend's eyes met mine instantly after that push. His expression said it all. He looked uncomfortable, guilty even, though I knew he hadn't done anything wrong. It was almost like he was silently apologizing for something he couldn't control. And that look, that awkward, almost embarrassed glance, hit me harder than anything else. My chest tightened, my palms started sweating, and I could feel the heat rising in my face. I wanted to scream, to call her out right then and there in front of everyone. I wanted to stand up and say, "Do you realize what you're doing? Do you see how humiliating this is for me?" But instead, I just sat there in silence. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I laughed at jokes I didn't even hear, nodded along to conversations I wasn't part of, all while the storm inside me grew louder and louder. That was the moment I realized I couldn't keep quiet anymore. This wasn't about jealousy. This wasn't about insecurity. This was about respect, and respect was something that should come naturally in a relationship, not something I had to beg for. As the night went on, I withdrew further into myself. My friends probably thought I was just tired or distracted, but inside, I was making a decision. I couldn't keep watching this happen. I couldn't keep letting myself be the silent observer while my girlfriend acted like my best friend was the star of the show and I was just a background extra. By the time the night ended and everyone started saying their goodbyes, I knew something had shifted. Something inside me had snapped. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't laugh it off, couldn't push it aside, couldn't convince myself I was overthinking. That night was my breaking point. And once you hit your breaking point, there's no going back. The morning after that get-together, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. The images from the night before played on repeat in my head. Her leaning in, whispering, laughing, and that playful shove that pushed me right to my breaking point. I knew I couldn't carry it inside anymore. If I did, it would eat me alive. But that didn't mean it was easy. My heart raced as I thought about confronting her. What if she called me jealous? What if she flipped it back on me and made me feel crazy? What if, by bringing it up, I created a problem bigger than the one I was trying to solve? Still, I knew silence was no longer an option. Respect was on the line, and I had to speak up. Later that day, I asked her if we could talk. I tried to keep my voice calm, steady, even though inside I felt like I was about to step onto a minefield. We sat down, just the two of us, no distractions. I took a deep breath, looked her in the eyes, and said, "I've noticed the way you act around my best friend. The laughing, the touching, the constant eye contact. It makes me uncomfortable." For a moment, silence. Then, like I feared, her whole demeanor changed. She crossed her arms, her eyebrows furrowed, and she fired back. "Are you saying I can't have fun? Are you saying I can't laugh at jokes? You're overreacting." The defensiveness stung. It wasn't just what she said, it was how quickly she said it. Like she'd been waiting for me to slip up and call it out. It wasn't the reaction of someone who wanted to understand how I felt. It was the reaction of someone who wanted to win an argument. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. But I knew this was the moment where I couldn't back down. If I caved, if I let her brush this off, then I'd be setting the tone for the rest of our relationship. That my feelings didn't matter. So I stayed calm. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't let the anger take over. Instead, I said, "I'm not saying you can't laugh. I'm not saying you can't have fun. What I'm saying is, there's a difference between being friendly and being flirty. And what you're doing, it doesn't feel friendly. It feels disrespectful to me." Her eyes narrowed and she shook her head. "Wow. So now I can't even be myself without you assuming the worst. Do you not trust me?" That word, trust, hit me hard. Because I did trust her. I trusted her enough to be honest about how I felt. This wasn't about accusing her of cheating. This was about how her actions, intentional or not, were making me feel small in my own relationship. I leaned forward, trying to make her understand. This isn't about trust. It's about respect. I trust you, but I also need to feel like I matter when we're in a group. When you give him all your attention, when you're constantly touching him, when you're whispering to him instead of me, it hurts. And it's not about me being insecure. It's about me expecting the same level of respect that I give you. For a second, her expression softened, like maybe my words were finally landing. But then, just as quickly, she rolled her eyes and sighed. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. He's your best friend. Don't you think if something was going on, you'd know?" And that right there told me everything. Instead of listening, instead of acknowledging my feelings, she minimized them. She made me feel like I was being dramatic, like I was asking for too much. But I stayed firm. I wasn't going to let her gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. "Look," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just telling you how your actions are making me feel. You don't have to agree with me. But if you care about this relationship, then you'll care about how I feel, even if you don't fully understand it." Her silence after that said more than words ever could. She didn't apologize. She didn't reassure me. She just sat there, arms crossed, lips pressed tight, like she was waiting for the conversation to be over. And in that moment, I realized something important. Sometimes it's not about whether your partner is guilty or innocent. Sometimes it's about whether they value your feelings enough to take them seriously. And from the way she reacted, it was painfully clear where I stood. After my conversation with her, I felt drained. My chest was heavy, my head pounding. The way she brushed off my feelings made me question myself all over again. Was I being dramatic? Was I asking for too much? Or was she simply unwilling to admit what she was doing? But there was one person I knew I had to talk to, my best friend. I trusted him more than anyone. We'd been through so much together: school, heartbreaks, late night talks. The kind of bond where you don't just call someone a friend, you call them family. If anyone could give me clarity, it was him. Still, I was nervous. What if he said I was overreacting? What if he admitted he liked the attention? The thought twisted my stomach into knots. A few days later, I asked him to meet me at our usual spot, a quiet coffee shop we'd been going to since high school. The kind of place where the staff knew us by name, where we'd spend hours joking, venting, planning our futures. But that day, the usual comfort of the place didn't reach me. My hands were clammy, my heart raced, and I couldn't stop bouncing my leg under the table as I waited for him to arrive. When he finally walked in, he greeted me like normal, but I know he could sense something was off. He sat down across from me, raised an eyebrow and said, "All right, what's up? You look like you're about to deliver bad news." I took a deep breath, my throat dry. This was it. "I need to talk to you about something. It's about her." He leaned back, surprised, but attentive. "Okay, go on." I didn't dance around it. I laid it out as calmly as I could. "I've noticed how she acts around you. The laughing, the touching, the eye contact. It makes me uncomfortable. And I need to know, are you encouraging it?" For a moment, his face froze. Then, to my relief, he shook his head quickly. "Man, I swear I haven't encouraged it. Honestly, it makes me uncomfortable too. I didn't know how to tell you without making things worse." I just sat there, letting those words sink in. The weight that lifted off my shoulders in that moment was unreal. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overthinking. He saw it too. He continued, leaning forward now, his voice low. "She'll laugh at things I say, but it feels forced, you know, like she's trying too hard. And when she touches my arm or shoulder, I never know how to react. I don't want to embarrass her, and I definitely don't want to hurt you. So I just awkwardly go along. But dude, I promise I don't want it. It makes me feel like I'm stepping into territory that isn't mine, and I hate it." Hearing him say that confirmed what I already knew. Deep down, the issue wasn't him, it was her. I nodded slowly, finally able to breathe a little easier. "Thanks, man. I just needed to hear that." Because she made me feel like I was overreacting, like I was imagining things. He frowned. "No, you're not. If it bothers you, then it's real. And if she cares about you, she should stop. It's not that complicated. That right there is why he's my best friend." He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't make excuses for her. He said what needed to be said, simple, honest, and true. I realized then how lucky I was to have him in my life. So many friendships fall apart when things like this happen. People choose sides. Drama explodes. Trust gets shattered. But not him. He looked me in the eye and reassured me that I wasn't alone in this. We spent the rest of that conversation talking it through. And he even offered, "If you want, I'll start keeping a little distance. Not in a rude way, but just enough. So she can't pull anything. That way you don't feel like you're stuck in the middle." That meant more than he probably realized. It wasn't just about creating distance. It was about showing me that he valued our friendship enough to make adjustments, even when he wasn't the one at fault. Walking out of that coffee shop, I felt lighter. Not happy, not fixed, but relieved. Because now I had clarity. Now I knew my best friend wasn't the problem. He wasn't the enemy. If anything, he was stuck in the same uncomfortable situation as me. The real issue, the one I'd have to face head on, was her. And that realization was both comforting and terrifying at the same time. Armed with the clarity I had gained from my best friend, I felt stronger. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't second-guessing myself. I wasn't wondering if I was just being paranoid, insecure, or too sensitive. I knew what I saw, and now I knew that even my best friend, someone with zero reason to lie, felt the same. So, I decided to talk to her again. This time, I promised myself I wouldn't let her twist my words or make me feel guilty for having feelings. This time, I'd be clear. We were sitting in her living room. She scrolled through her phone, half listening to some show on TV, while I sat there rehearsing in my head. My palms were sweaty, my heart thumping. Finally, I said, "We need to talk." She looked up briefly, then set her phone aside. "Okay, about what?" I took a deep breath. "About how you act around my best friend. I brought it up before, and you brushed me off, but I can't stay quiet anymore. The way you laugh, touch his arm, the constant eye contact. It doesn't feel like just friendship. It feels flirty, and it makes me uncomfortable. And I need you to take that seriously." For a second, she just stared at me. I thought maybe she'd soften. Maybe she'd say, "I didn't realize it bothered you that much. I'll stop." That's what respect would have sounded like. That's what love should have looked like. But instead, she let out a sharp laugh. Not the kind that hides nerves or misunderstanding. The kind that says, "This conversation is ridiculous to me. You're just being jealous," she said bluntly, crossing her arms. "If you can't handle me having guy friends, maybe this isn't going to work." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I sat there, stunned. After everything I had just laid out, after opening up about how disrespected I felt, that was her response. No acknowledgement, no attempt to understand, just dismissal. Worse, she turned it back on me, framing it as my problem, as if I were the unreasonable one. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not saying you can't have guy friends. I'm saying there's a difference between being friendly and being flirty. I'm not asking you to cut people out of your life. I'm asking for respect, because the way you're acting hurts me." But she rolled her eyes, like my words didn't even deserve consideration. "I think you're overreacting. If you don't, trust me, then maybe we shouldn't be together." And that's when it finally clicked for me. Respect shouldn't feel like a debate. It shouldn't feel like pulling teeth just to be heard. If the person who claims to love you can't pause for even a second to validate your feelings, then what do you really have? Because love without respect, that's not love at all. That's chaos. In that moment, I saw her clearly for the first time. The little signs I had ignored before suddenly made sense. The way she craved attention in social settings. The way she always had to be at the center of a laugh, even if it came at my expense. The way she never really apologized when she hurt me, just brushed things aside until I dropped them. She wasn't the person I thought she was. Or maybe she was, and I just didn't want to admit it until now. Sitting across from her, I felt her shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but it was joined by something else. Acceptance. Acceptance that this relationship wasn't built on the foundation I thought it was. Acceptance that if she couldn't show me the bare minimum of respect, then no amount of love or history could make this work. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't try to convince her anymore. Instead, I said quietly, "If that's really how you feel, then maybe you're right. Maybe this isn't going to work." Her eyes widened, like she hadn't expected me to call her bluff. But I wasn't bluffing. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was standing up for myself, not with anger, but with clarity. And that clarity showed me her true colors. Dismissive, defensive, unwilling to respect my boundaries. And in that realization, I knew what I had to do next. Looking back now, I can see everything so much more clearly than I could in the moment. At the time, I felt torn between two versions of reality. One voice in my head whispered, "Maybe you're just insecure. Maybe you're making something out of nothing." The other voice pushed back, "No, you know what you saw. You know how it made you feel. And feelings don't lie." That's when I finally understood the difference between insecurity and self-respect. Insecurity is when you create problems in your head that don't exist. It's when your imagination runs wild, convincing you that your partner is cheating because they took too long to text back, or that they don't love you anymore because they seemed distracted one evening. That's insecurity. It's the battles we invent in our minds. But what I went through wasn't insecurity. It was reality. I wasn't imagining her laughing too hard at his jokes. I wasn't making up the touches on his arm, the lingering eye contact, the way she directed her energy toward him while I sat right there. Those things happened, plain and simple, pretending they didn't. Just because it was easier would have been self-betrayal. And here's the truth. I had to learn the hard way. Standing up for yourself when something is wrong isn't insecurity. It's self-respect. If you're watching this and you've ever found yourself in a similar spot, I want you to remember something important. A healthy partner won't make you feel crazy for expressing how you feel. A healthy partner won't laugh off your discomfort, won't roll their eyes, won't dismiss you as jealous or overreacting. A healthy partner listens. They may not always agree right away, but they'll care enough to validate your feelings and work through them with you. If the person you're with can't do that, then you don't have a relationship. You have a negotiation, and one where you're always losing. Looking back, her reaction told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't about the jokes or the shoulder taps. It was about her lack of respect. She could have said, "I didn't realize it bothered you that much. I'll be more mindful." That's all it would have taken. But instead, she turned the blame on me, painting me as insecure, when the truth was, I was finally finding the courage to stand up for myself. And when someone shows you that kind of dismissive behavior, you have to believe them. Believe their actions, believe their words, and believe the message they're sending loud and clear. Your feelings don't matter to me. That realization stung, but it also freed me, because here's the part I'm proud of. I chose peace over drama. I could have dragged it out, begged her to change, tried to convince her over and over, but what would that have done except exhaust me and erode my self-worth even more? Instead, I walked away, not because I stopped caring, but because I started caring about myself just a little bit more. And you know what? I don't regret it for a second. My best friend is still my best friend. If anything, this whole mess made our bond stronger because he proved that his loyalty was to me and our friendship, not to someone's fleeting attention. That kind of loyalty is rare, and I'll never take it for granted. My girlfriend, well, she became part of my past. A chapter I had to close in order to protect my peace. And that's okay. Not everyone who comes into your life is meant to stay. Some people are lessons disguised as lovers. And she was exactly that. A lesson. And the lesson she taught me was simple, but life-changing. Love without respect isn't love at all. It's just a ticking time bomb. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where your instincts are screaming that something feels off, don't silence them just because you're afraid of conflict. Trust them. Respect yourself enough to confront what doesn't feel right. And if the person on the other side can't handle a simple, honest conversation about your feelings, then ask yourself, is this really the kind of love I want? Because at the end of the day, peace of mind is priceless. Respect is non-negotiable, and no amount of affection, history, all sweet words can make up for a lack of it. So that's my story. And my hope is that by sharing it, someone out there who's sitting with that same gut feeling I once had will realize they're not crazy. They're not insecure. They're just finally listening to their own self-respect. And that's something no one should ever apologize for.